Most of what the market shows you is noise dressed up as opportunity. The tape is relentless. The conversation around markets is relentless. Every day brings fresh movement, fresh rumors, fresh reasons to act. And the human mind, wired as it is for pattern and urgency, wants to respond to all of it. It wants to find the signal in every ripple. It wants to be doing something because doing something feels like participation, and participation feels like progress. It is not progress. Most of the time, it is just expense. The first discipline of serious trading is not, knowing what to buy. It is knowing what to ignore. The market will always give you more setups than you can trade, more stories than you can evaluate, more movement than you can follow. Your job is not to keep up with all of it. Your job is to refuse most of it, firmly, quietly, without regret, and save your attention, your capital, and your nerve for the occasions that genuinely warrant them. Think of it this way: a patient speculator operates the way a patient editor operates. An editor does not print everything submitted. The editor reads, considers, and discards, not because most submissions are worthless in the abstract, but because the column is finite and only the best deserves space. The speculator's column is his capital. It is finite. Every position he takes occupies space that could have been held for something better. Every mediocre trade he enters costs him not just the commission or the small loss it may produce, but the opportunity it displaces. The better trade, when it finally arrives, may find him stretched thin, distracted, or flat out of room. This is the hidden cost that most traders never account for. They track their losses in dollars. They rarely track the losses in readiness. There is a kind of trader who is always in something. He is always positioned, always watching his open trades, always managing the noise his own activity generates. He confuses motion with presence in the market. But the market does not reward presence. It rewards accuracy. And accuracy requires a clear view, which requires distance, which requires patience. The hardest thing to learn, and it takes most traders years to accept it, is that sitting on your hands is itself an act of skill. Waiting is not passivity. Waiting is a form of preparation. You are staying clean, staying solvent, staying alert. You are refusing to spend yourself on trades that do not deserve you. Now, when you do act, when you have found something that genuinely meets your standard, something that fits the conditions you have been watching for, you act with the full authority of that patience behind you. You are not guessing. You are not bored. You are not chasing. You have waited and now you move. Livermore understood this about himself after hard experience. He recognized that his worst results came not from the trades he had thought about carefully, but from the trades he had not been able to resist. The impulsive trade. The one he knew at some level was below standard, but he took it anyway because the market was moving and the urge to be in it was stronger than his judgment. He called it the enemy within, the emotional machinery that manufactures urgency out of nothing and dresses restlessness up as conviction. Every trader carries that enemy. It is not unique to any era or any market. It is simply human nature meeting uncertainty. And human nature does not like to wait. But the market does not care what you can tolerate emotionally. It unfolds according to its own pressures and its own logic. The trader who has learned to match his tempo to the market's actual rhythm, who can watch a setup develop over days or weeks without forcing it, who can let inferior situations pass without feeling. He has missed something. That trader has already solved a problem that defeats most participants before the real work even begins. The discipline of refusal is not glamorous. Nobody talks about the trades they sat out. Nobody tells the story of the morning they watched a move and did nothing. But those mornings accumulate. They are the foundation. And when the genuine opportunity finally arrives, shaped cleanly, moving the right way, confirming what you have been watching for, you will be there, fresh and ready, with nothing in your hands but exactly the trade you have been patient enough to deserve. Most of what the market shows you is noise dressed up as opportunity. Every day the tape runs, there are dozens of situations that look, at first glance, like they deserve your attention. A stock breaking out of a range, a sector rotating into favor, a rumor circulating that something big is about to happen. The market is endlessly generous with its invitations. What it is not generous with is the consequences of accepting the wrong ones. The discipline of refusal is not glamorous. It does not feel like skill when you are sitting on your hands watching something move without you. It feels in those moments like cowardice or like stubbornness or like you are simply missing the point. But the trader who cannot refuse is the trader who is always busy and rarely profitable. He is like a man who says yes to every commitment and therefore keeps none of them well. His capital is scattered. His attention is divided. And when the genuine opportunity arrives, the one that was actually worth the risk, he is already overextended, already wounded by 3 half-convictions that went against him. This is the cost of not cutting, not just the loss on any single bad trade, but the compounding drag of being in the wrong places when the right place finally appears. Every unnecessary position you carry is a tax on your judgment. It clouds your thinking, it ties up your capital. It means you are managing something you should have refused in the first place. The market rewards clarity, and clarity requires that you have said no far more often than you have said yes. Now consider what cutting actually costs you in the moment. You pass on a trade that looked promising, sometimes it runs without you. You watch it go, that is uncomfortable, that is the specific acute discomfort of the discipline, and there is no way around it. The question is not whether it will hurt to pass. The question is whether that hurt is the right kind. Missing a gain you chose not to pursue is a very different wound from sitting in a loss you should never have taken. One is the price of standards, the other is the price of weakness. A trader who cannot tell the difference between those two kinds of pain will spend his career confusing discipline with failure. What cutting saves you is harder to see because it lives in the world of things that did not happen. It saves you from the slow erosion of capital across a dozen mediocre ideas. It saves you from the attention cost of managing positions that were never really worth your time. And it saves you, crucially, from the psychological trap of defending a trade you knew from the beginning was not quite right. Because that is what happens. You enter something halfway convinced, it goes against you a little, and suddenly you are not a trader anymore. You are an advocate. You are building a case for why you were right. That is where the real damage gets done, not in the first loss, but in the argument you make with yourself to avoid taking it. There is a principle that the best trade is the one you were willing to wait for, not the trade that looked good enough this morning or the one that seemed like it might work if a few things broke your way, the one you watched and studied and let develop and did not touch until the conditions were unmistakably in your favor. That trade, when it comes, carries a different quality of conviction. You entered it because it earned your attention, not because the market was moving and you felt you needed to be involved. Jesse Livermore understood this with a particular hardness. He spoke of waiting for the market to confirm its own intention before committing fully, watching the pivotal point, the moment when the line of least resistance finally declared itself. He was not waiting out of timidity. He was waiting out of respect for the difficulty of the thing. A good speculator, he believed, earns his profit not just by being right, but by being patient enough to be right at the right time. That patience is not passive. It is a constant act of refusal. And every refusal, every trade you had the discipline not to take is a small act of editing, keeping only what is strong, discarding what merely looks interesting. The patient speculator is a patient editor. Most of what comes across his desk he does not publish. Most of what the market shows you on any given day is noise dressed up as opportunity. Prices moving, headlines arriving, rumors circulating, other traders visibly busy. All of it creates the sensation that something must be done. That sensation is one of the market's oldest traps. It flatters the restless mind into believing that activity is the same thing as progress, that watching closely obligates you to act. It does not. The discipline of refusal is not a passive thing. It takes more effort to hold still than most people imagine because the pressure to act is constant and it comes from every direction at once. It comes from the screen, from the news, from the people around you who seem always to be doing something. And underneath all of that external pressure is an internal one, the fear of missing out, the nagging suspicion that while you are waiting, someone else is getting rich on the very move you passed on. That fear is almost never rational and almost always expensive. Here's the plain truth of it. The number of genuinely good opportunities in any market over any reasonable stretch of time is small. Not tiny, but small. The market does not owe you a fine setup every morning. It offers you dozens of mediocre ones, and if you are patient, a handful of excellent ones. The trader who can tell the difference, and more importantly, who can act on that difference by doing nothing most of the time, has already separated himself from the majority. Most traders lose not because they are wrong about the market's general direction. They lose because they act too often, too soon, on material that does not warrant it. Think of it this way: a good editor does not improve a piece of writing by adding more words. She improves it by removing the weak ones until only the strong ones remain. The page gets shorter and the meaning gets clearer. The same principle holds in trading. Your portfolio, your list of active positions, your watch list, these things do not improve by growing longer. They improve when you are ruthless about what belongs and what does not. When you are willing to let 100 setups pass without regret because none of them met the standard you set in a clear-headed moment. Now, cutting things costs you something. That is worth saying plainly because anyone who tells you patience is free has not practiced it honestly. When you pass on a trade that later moves substantially in the direction you anticipated, it stings. There is a real psychological cost to watching something run without you, especially if you studied it, considered it, and then let it go because the conditions were not quite right. That cost is real. Do not pretend otherwise. But here is what cutting saves you. It saves you from the positions that look nearly identical to the ones that work but do not work. And those positions are far more numerous. For every setup that goes without you and proves you wrong to wait, there are several more that would have gone against you, taken your capital, taken your time, and left you in a worse position to recognize and act on the genuine opportunity when it finally arrived. The patience tax, paid in watching good moves from the sideline, is almost always cheaper than the impatience tax, paid in losses accumulated from trading everything that moved. Jesse Livermore understood this at a bone-deep level. He spoke of waiting for the market to confirm what he already suspected, of not moving until the line of least resistance revealed itself clearly. He was not waiting out of timidity. He was waiting so that when he did move, the move was worth making. And that is the final point of this. The best trade you ever make is almost always the one you were willing to wait for, not the one you chased, not the one you forced because you felt overdue for a winner, not the one you talked yourself into because it was close enough to your criteria, the one you sat with patiently while everything else around it failed to qualify, and then, when it finally aligned, you recognized it for what it was and acted with conviction. That clarity only comes from a mind that has not been worn down by 100 half-hearted positions. It comes from one that has been conserved. There is no asphalt boulevard to success in Wall Street or anywhere else. Why additionally block traffic? The market rewards the few who stand apart. Find the tape at charthorizon.com.